Okay, so welcome. This is a discussion about the coolness, the identity, the authenticity of Camden. And I've been imported as a born and bred Londoner from Sweden. I think Ben's idea is that Sweden's probably cool. I'm not sure. I may fail. But then again, you'll all be testing your coolness at the end. And if you're not cool, you'll be shipped off to Kilburn. So we've got Alex Proud to kind of lead the charge. Alex is the founder and curator of Proud Camden. He's also the vice chair of CTU, which is behind the festival. And he's a polemical columnist in the Telegraph. Ben van der Velde is a comedian. He hosted the comedy night last night. He's also standing for the Green Party in Camden. What we're going to do is see what these guys have to say, and we're all going to explore it together. You've written a bunch of interesting stuff about what it is for cool to be real or sustainable. Do you want to rehearse some of that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the article I wrote that some of you might have, I apologise, read. Its basic thesis was that, when you look at, I was going to say we, but actually you all look much younger than me. When you look at people my age, areas kind of came into fashion, out of fashion, over in a generational sense of that word. So a place like Camden, to use an example, its heritage is built on basically the railways dying and the area dying, and it basically becoming a wasteland, and then slowly but surely through artists, in its broadest sense, musicians, artists, creative people, so the Clash, the Sex Pistols, took over the market, and over a long period of time, a genuine heritage is built that creates a reputation that now, it's really interesting. I don't think we're really rubbish, British people, at realising sometimes reputation, but when you interview kids, I think they did Visit Britain, interviewed people around the world under the age of 30, and the number one reason they wanted to visit Britain was Camden, and that sort of reputation takes a generation to build up, and it's something that everyone who comes from and lives or works or visits Camden should be really proud of. It's an internationally famous reputation. And I think that sort of gentrification or way of creating distinct neighbourhoods in the greatest city in the world is fabulous. What worries me now is that we've kind of created a system that's very different, that's more kind of like fast food cool, in the sense that the speed at which it happens. I mean, an example of this is the hipsters when Amy was at her peak and indie pop was at its peak, sort of in about 2006. You couldn't walk on that on the strip outside on a Thursday, Friday night. Now that just goes in 1 year, and it goes to Shoreditch, and now it's there, and then it goes to Dalston for a year, and it's there. Now it's in Peckham, or it's wherever it is, Elephant and Castle. And it's so frighteningly fast, and that worries me, because I think it's not genuine, it's not rooted. And one wonders what's driving it. Is it being, the way that the money follows it, and that people are priced out really quickly, which we all know is probably London's big core problem right now, is house prices. It's killing the goose that laid an egg. I'm sort of swapping subjects here, but the two are massively interlinked. And I feel it really worries me. Yeah, and there's a whole lot of humour with that, the hating hipsters and hating, beards, looking at someone with a beard in row one, sorry. Shave it. And that's just tongue-in-cheek joking. That's just an old fat bald guy speaking. I'm just jealous because actually I can grow a beard, but it's just a bit silver foxy. But bald and fat speaking, that's supposed to add comedy. I don't give a flying monkeys about that stuff. But this other stuff, and in some ways I'm annoyed I wrote that, because it enabled a lot of people. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you, that article is extraordinary. It's sort of got read by about 500,000 people, and I was stupid, because in writing that stuff about hipsters, it gave people an excuse to have a go at me, and it missed the core point. I love Shoreditch. I think it's a fantastic area. Dalston, I love these places. Sadly, I can't go there because people pee in my food now. But they probably peed in my food anyway. But they do more so now, or worse. And I think they're amazing areas, and it's fantastic, and the vitality and imagination. But I'm worried about this speed. I'm worried about the way property prices have become so interconnected with it, and that sometimes being cool looks like an excuse to start for people to make money, middle class people to make huge amounts of money on their houses and flats and their buy-to-lets. And I'm worried also about the standardization. I think when we were young, or I was young and I went into Reading, what you always struck you when you went to Europe was how beautiful Paris and Madrid was. Everyone looks the same. Everyone's in expensive jeans, looks a bit, well, actually I'm in cheap jeans, but expensive jeans, white shirt, nice haircut. And what was brilliant, and still is brilliant about London, is our individuality and our eccentricity, and that's what's made London one of the capitals of the world. And I worry a bit when you get to Shoreditch, we've lost a bit of that, and it's become a bit standardised. The bars, the hotels, it can be, if I woke up in my nightmare, I would know I was in Shoreditch immediately when I look round. And I think Camden and other areas of London still have that variety and that individuality, which I think is really important as well. So that was the broad point of that article. And the secondary article I wrote as a follow-up was talking about we're kidding the goose that laid the golden egg right now. And I know a lot of people then commented on it and said, well, London's still really cool and Camden's cool and Shoreditch is cool, and it is, but you have to act before something happens. If we don't act now, by the time there is nobody cool and we start to look like Paris or Geneva or Madrid, which are beautiful cities but fairly standard and fairly straight, which is the reason they're not as popular as London. If we don't act now, it will be too late by the time it's happened. When that happens, we won't be able to get it back. We have to sort it out right now. The prices of housing in London and the way that the oligarchs and KGB crooks and all the others have inflated pricing massively, buying to lets, and just middle class people, I think, trying to make a living out of buying and selling houses. I think there's a lot that's wrong with that, and there's a lot of really simple ways we can solve, which we can talk about later.
But start with just a couple of things just a couple of throw in a couple of solutions, because you laid out a pretty rich problematique.
I think the simplest solution to London's problem right now is an acceptance that we need to. What pisses you off is the government write about, what's that new, is it Ebbsfleet, the new town? And, it's tiny. You're talking about building 20,000 flats. We're talking about we have to build 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 flats in London in the next 2 to 3 years, or house prices are going to continue rising. We have to massively deflate the bubble, and it's easily done. The joy of it is it's like, what's it called, karate or something, or taekwondo, where you use the strength of the opposition to beat them. The way we can beat all this house pricing is the fact that actually developers, the prices are so high that we can actually negotiate amazing deals with developers. You can say we take a really low density housing estate in Camden. We can take that and say it's got 100 people in it. We can knock it down. We can tell the developer he's got to put 300 council flats, not 100 in, and then we can build 1,000 flats above it. 70s and 80s housing in London is a disaster zone of low density housing. There's a car park here where you could put about 5,000 flats on the car park behind Morrison's. We can build 300,000 flats in 3 years in London and house another 1 million people. And suddenly, students and nurses and teachers and young people are going to be able to afford to rent in Camden and buy in Camden, because right now not a single member of my staff, and I employ a lot of people, lives anywhere near Camden. Just back in 2005, half my staff live within a mile of me.
So one more question before we go to Ben. Why do you care?
Because I live in Camden. I care. I love London. London is my home. I think it's the greatest city in the world, and I think we have something completely unique and amazing in London. The only place that comes close to it is New York, and how much I love New York, I don't think it has the individuality of London. I think London has something that is absolutely well-beating, and these days we don't have many of those left, and it will really upset me. But I'm 44, and assuming I don't carry on drinking at the rate I currently drink at, I might actually live to see this all happening. I don't want to be 60 and to see London looking like Paris. And who would have thought in the 60s, if you said Paris was going to be a really dull city and half of Paris was going to live in London, you'd have been laughed at. And yet here we are, 30 years later, half of Paris lives in bloody London, and the other half wishes they live in London. Sorry to any French people.
Ben, so what's your take? Is Camden, has it got a rosy future in terms of its cool index? And what's your role in protecting it? Because I know you've got some interest.
Yeah, I think like Camden obviously has got a cool identity. I'm from Newcastle originally, and Camden was the first place I hit when I came here as a 14-year-old. And it was for all the reasons that Alex has talked about. It was about its musical heritage that's really famous, about some cracking bars that I reckon I could try and get into with some homemade fake ID, and a really vibrant, thriving market scene. What I think is the threat to Camden now is less this idea of Shoreditchification and more the fact that tourism is going to kill its identity. If you go from Camden Station down to the Stables Market, it's like a Piccadilly circus of rock and roll culture, and there are maybe 3 good shops or restaurants all the way down there. Even when you start to get into the Stables, I'm worrying it's getting like that now. It's much as I love the Saturday food market down by the canal, that's not what Camden's really about. I mean, it's very tasty and it's wonderfully multicultural and international, but that sort of misses the point of what it's about. The things that do make Camden what it is the reinvigorated Roundhouse, is Alex's Gallery, is still the Barfly and the Electric Ballroom. But I'm worried that those venues, your venue, if we're not careful, could become, like all of Camden, a parody of itself. And that for me is the really big worry of this part of the world. The other side of it is that Camden Council, to some degree or another, are trying to homogenise this part of the world. Like John was saying, I have sort of stumbled headlong into local politics because I'm standing for the Green Party in a couple of weeks' time. The reason I'm doing that is because Camden Council have put in place a scheme which is licensing busking in the most famous musical borough on the planet. If you are a 16-year-old kid who's just written a cracking song and wants to try it out in the public, or if you're a professional musician, if you go out on the street and you play music without a licence, you'll be criminalised, you'll be given a £1,000 fine, and you'll have your instrument confiscated to pay for that fine. If I went out on the streets now and let a dog take a dump, I would get fined. If I took a dump on the street now, I would be fined less than a musician who was playing music. And I was chatting to a journalist today who did the Freedom of Information Act, and since the licence came in about 6-8 weeks, there have been 28 people have applied for it because we've told a lot of the buskers that we're working with not to do that. Only 6 of them have been granted. So according to Camden Council, only 6 people on the planet are worthy and able to busk in this area, and that worries me. That individuality, that spontaneity is going to be taken away because there is something. It sounds horribly pretentious, but there is something of a mecca about Camden. That if you go up to Britannia Square, yeah, you'll get cracking musicians of all sorts. Yeah, you'll also get ranting and raving tramps and drunks and homeless people. But also, it's got that sort of Glastonbury Field of Lost Vagueness atmosphere about it. I was chatting to this random Scouse hobo artist who would turn up in his dungarees and chalk poems on the pavement and get out this weird upturned Chinese percussion instrument and play that for a bit whilst spewing out beat poetry. Now, whether you think that's good or bad is by the by. I thought it was mainly quite awful. But I love the fact that he can come to Camden and do that. Give it 20 years' time, there'll be no one like that here if we carry on as we are.
Well, there's a new activity just been added to the programme. You'll be taking a dump on the pavement. Tickets are on sale now.
Excellent.
But so, is it not 2 parts of the same puzzle, which is that on one level, people are commercialising and plastifying the street culture. On another level, in here and elsewhere, people are basically buying in cool, and it becomes a kind of ephemeral thing. Are you guys talking about the same thing, or is there a different kind of phenomenon?
I think the points about Camden are separate and are local, and I think they're valid. I think a lot of it comes down to, I can now say this without being worried I'm going to have a baseball bat taken to me, but a certain ex-landlord of Stables Market, basically went bankrupt and had no money to invest in Stables Market, and that happened about 4 years ago. And I think that's really where you start to see this tacky tourist element creeps massively in Stables Market. I mean, Stables Market is a complete and utter mess of stalls right now. I can say that because I think the new landlord is exciting. He's going to spend a lot of money on it. I think he has a genuine desire to bring it back to its glory days. And I think
Just ask that because I remember going there in the late 90s, and it was shonky and scutty, but there was a nice independent spirit there because I read about this chap taking over. And do you genuinely believe he's going to do it, or is he going?
It's early days, but yeah. I mean, he's got the money. He set up 888, and the gambling website. And I think it's worth about £2 billion. He's going to spend 100 million on it, and I think. He wants to meet me, and he's met a load of people, and all of us are telling him you'll make more money by putting individuality back into Stables Market, by allowing subsidised rent for students. I mean, basically copying what CTU do. I hope a lot of you have been down to Collective, our shop that we do with the council down on the high street, and it's brilliant. It's what the future of Camden Town should be. We've got about, at any one stage, 10 empty shops on the high street. And if we can put a lot of young businesses and student fashion designers, IT people, computer startup people, we can put those kids into Camden and we can regenerate the high street. And one thing Camden does have, a massive unused resource, is we have this huge high street, because we all think of Camden, and we're actually all talking about Chalk Farm. We're talking about Camden Tube Station, what we call the strip up to Chalk Farm Tube Station. And actually, there's this other bit of Camden, which we just don't use. It's completely underused. And so, on one hand, I think you're right. I think, the council needs to be given, and this is another big London-wide solution. The problem is in planning at the moment, councils can just say retail, restaurant, or licensing. There's no power within that. So there's no difference between McDonald's and what's that really cute restaurant that's just opened up next door? I've forgotten. There's no difference, and the council aren't allowed to stipulate a difference. And we need to give councils the power to stipulate the difference between big chain stores and independents. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm quite up for having Marks and Sparks and a few nice, Top Man or whatever else. They're great shops. We need them in the high street. And a few charity shops. A lot of residents like charity shops. But the rest of the high street is, to be frank, is pretty dire. And if we can regenerate the high street and create a real individuality down there, that would really help. The council needs to be allowed to stipulate the people that come in, because you're right, the strip is awful right now. There's two. Up at this end, it's still great. We've still got independents all along here. But the section between the bridge and the tube station is, compared to 20 years ago, most of you might remember it when you were a lot younger, it used to be achingly cool, and it's mainly tack right now, which is a real shame. And ditto, Stables Market is full of really bad stalls right now. The lot market is considerably better, and it's much better run. And if Stables is like that, it's the engine of Camden. We can regenerate the area, but the area does need it. It has become too touristy. And when I wrote that article about Shoreditch, and I was bigging Camden up, because I am Camden to my core. I got the piss taken an awful lot, and it was quite difficult to defend some of it, which hurts. Being like a football team being relegated, you can't really hide that some of it was true. And we need to act on that stuff. And the council needs to be more aggressive about it, and we need to really put the pressure on the new owners of Stables Market by supporting good independent traders. But I'm hopeful it can happen. I mean, if we look at the strip under here, there's a lot of great retailers and a lot of great restaurants, and it's mainly independent traders. So I'd see no reason why we can't get back to the glory days of the late 90s, when Camden was definitely at its peak, or early 2000s.
I think. Sorry.
Hold on, one second. If you guys want to jump in and add points or challenge or just whatever, do so. That's the whole point. Carry on.
Yeah, I think the thing. One thing I wanted to ask about Alex, and I know you said you like Shoreditch, you like some of the people and things there, but this notion, this idea of hipsters, because I sort of know what you mean by it, because I like to think I'm not part of that crowd, because they are people. Hipsters are the kind of people that I like to bash myself. But for me, what I think it is the difference in Camden and Shoreditch is that Camden's got a sense of humour, whereas Shoreditch is far too holier than that.
Yeah, I mean, anyone gets so far up their own arse, they don't realise their beers look really bad. I'm just doing this to annoy you now, by the way. It's just going to go for the whole hour if we're here.
Put a lot of effort into it.
I know. No, I think that's just us having fun. I think any movement that everyone ends up looking the same, and you clearly are Camden through and through, looking at those shoes, fabulous.
Born today.
Okay. Is whenever anyone ends up looking the same, then they might as well be wearing a fucking suit. Yeah. You know what I mean? If we all look the same, and that's what I love about Camden, because it's never like that here. That's a really good example sitting in front of us, because top up, you could be a hipster through and through, and then you look down and go, no, he's from Camden, because no one in Shoreditch would ever wear those shoes. You probably won't get allowed into Shoreditch in those shoes.
Well, it's cracking. You've got the Camden look is like those little children's flick books where you could have the head of a chicken and the body of a ballerina and the legs of a football. That's what it's gone for.
Amalgamation, a mix.
Absolutely. I mean, sentences like that make you sound more Shoreditch, but let's not worry about it.
So I think, yeah, I don't dislike hipsters, but I don't want everyone looking the same. I think, at the end of the day, a lot of people said, well, what the hipster movement kind of did to those areas was essentially good. And I think that's right. They did take areas that were very down at hill and they look great now. Yeah. But I don't want that in Camden. No, I want Camden I want us to have our little nutty punks who still get paid to have their photos taken. I know they're a tourist tacky thing, but I kind of love them all the same, and I want us to carry on looking different here. And, I think the key thing with our heritage here in Camden is independent fashion and stallholders, and secondly, it's music. Music. Like the American economy. It's the economy, dummy. It's music, dummy.
Yep.
Camden has more music on a given night than pretty much the rest of London has all week or all month, and Shoreditch in particular. And that is more than anything else what sets us out. And I think I get frustrated there. I think the council, obviously being vice chair of CTU, I have to be careful because my chairman's here, and I might be speaking off off policy or off piece. But the council don't reward or acknowledge what music is to this borough and what it's. And this is a problem with council tax, business tax being paid to central government rather than to local council, because the council only answers to local residents. They have absolutely no interest. Of course, they have an interest, but there's no democratic interest in local business. My money doesn't go to my council. My money goes to the central government, who then give it back to the council. Thatcher did this in the 80s, where to castrate all the left-wing councils, to get rid of them because they were driving her nuts. And it's a diabolical situation because it means we're unrepresented completely. Business is unrepresented in local politics. So, for example, the last 5 years for music venues in Camden has been one long pain in the arse. I mean, most of you know I had a licence review 2 years ago. We're under massive pressure from the council, the police. It takes one resident. I'm getting in real trouble from Chris here, who lives,
It's your turn next, Chris.
But you have one resident living on Harmony Street. They bought their flat for 500 grand, and it's only worth 2 million. They want it to be worth 3 million, and they want to shut every music venue down. And I'm really sorry. I live further away from Camden. I live in a smaller flat because it's quieter. You make a choice. It's like people are moving to Soho and want to get rid of all the sort of the seediness which made Soho and is what Soho is about. And I think the council in Camden really they've improved a bit. And there are some councillors who are really supportive. Theo from the Labour Party, I enjoy working with enormously. But as a rule, we get crucified, the music business, the pub, the licensing industry, the nightclub industry in Camden. It's a fairly uphill struggle. And it's perverse. It's what makes Camden famous. Can you imagine what Camden would be like? I know I agree there are too many tourists, but without those tourists, they are bread and butter.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I agree with you that the tourist thing's gone too far. Yes.
What is the correlation between all the tourists we see? I mean, we walked up just now from Camden town, and it's these people might have jobs. There's all, I don't know where they're coming from.
It's mainly language students. It's a vast amount of language students. A lot of it.
They're older than that, but I don't think they are people that then come to the music venues in the evening.
No, no.
There's a correlation between kind of the tourists that are up and
I think you call them. I think
6 o'clock.
I think you call them bread and butter. They're not the biggest spenders, average spend wise. They're not critical to our success.
I think it's different. I think it's a different market. I think it's different. The people that we saw as we were walking up earlier on, they're all flooding probably home or to the.
What's your name? What's your name?
Fenella.
Fenella?
Yes.
Clarify your point. So are you saying that you want more tourists or less tourists or more hipsters or more beards or just...
More tourists.
Okay.
No. But, do the tourists that are here, saying, are they actually supporting the music venues? I mean, I'm
not massively, no.
Of, Camden having more music venues, more independent traders, and smaller traders.
But we need to make that much louder to the council. At the moment, for example, what is the new restaurant just under the Stay Club called? Just next to us here. Q. Right, they had their licence rejected first time. I mean, this is a really, really upmarket, really nice independent restaurant. There's about 4 or 5 of them, I think, around. It's brilliant to have them here in Camden. in Short Farm. An amazing addition to the strip. And the council damn near told them to sod off. And you're just sitting there going, because we've got this now, we're a stress area and we can't have any more licensed venues. And I just think, there's this whole thing, all the policing it brings and everything else. But, it forgets the fact that I pay something like, $1.5 million in tax on booze every year. Booze is taxed massively.
But let me ask this before you. Let me ask this. Carry on, Fanuna. Yeah.
Q is great, but again, they're not a small little independent.
How many of them are there?
They said I lunched there today actually, and they said they've got their opening Selfridges roof and their roof terrace, and they're opening one in the city, which is a kind of sort of sushi, ceviche bar. So I mean, they're up market, but I think really fantastic for Camden.
I mean, I think because we've got a lot of cheap food in Camden. I think there's no harm in having a few different places, but it is absolutely absurd that they had their license rejected. It's an absolute embarrassment to the policy of the council that a place like that got, and they've now got a policy where I went in. I'm Alex Burrow, I'm Proud Garage. They went, you can't have a drink here, I'm sorry, unless you sit down and eat. And I went, seriously? I said, I know the cop who'll come and do you. And they were so terrified. They wouldn't give me a drink, and they're absolutely terrified. Their license is incredibly onerous. And I think the lack of support, and in fact the downright hostility, basically it's the tail wagging the dog. You've got 2 or 3 very, very well organised middle-class streets that come on the street, and they have power way beyond what they should do.
Let me ask this, Alex. Hold on a second. Let me ask this. Do you not think that there's a danger that you're setting yourself up as a tastemaker, as a kind of ultimate arbiter of what is and is not cool? Because it seems like you were all touting...
That's not dangerous, that's just a bloody good idea. Sorry, was that a little arrogant?
Well,
no,
but so the point then is, and let me put the question to you this way, is there not a danger that you're trying to kind of like trap cool in amber and ossify it because you've got a sense of what it is? You said the phrase "the glory days" a number of times, and I'm wondering, isn't it always going to be the case, as frustrating and as kind of poignant as this is, that cool is ephemeral? Cool moves on. Cool reinvents itself out of a vacuum. I'm asking to support independent traders.
I'm saying that basically young people tend to be cool, and there's not enough young people, and there's too many older people running tat stores, selling British flags and mugs and all sorts of really bad food made from rats that they catch in the market. So you're talking about cultural risk-taking, basically, not just like capturing one version of cool. And the council supporting independence and wanting it and acknowledging that Camden and music and entertainment, as you were talking about just now, are utterly interlinked. And if we don't start to really encourage that, we're going to end up, come on, I was within 5 minutes of losing Proud. That licence review, it was that bloody close, that we Proud almost closed down.
It's a bit of a follow-on, because the thing that occurred to me was sort of this idea around aesthetics. So in a way you're talking about something in relation to aesthetics, the aesthetics of social relations. But it also, as much as I agree in some sense with John, I think it's an important point that you're making, and maybe it draws out questions in terms of frameworks. There was a lunchtime conversation that I found quite interesting in terms of the friendly dictator, or how do you actually bring this type of critique to legislation, or what is it that we need to do, rather than, because we all know, in a way, I totally am sort of aligned with a lot of what people are saying here, but I think the thing that frustrates me is, what is this framework? Everyone's talking about, we should have a framework. Is it a friendly dictator? Is it this? Is it that? But what is it? And then earlier, and sorry to bring another conversation in, but I think it's quite relevant, John was talking about this relationship of subjectivity that doesn't seem to be brought out. And what I mean by subjectivity is we are all individual people. And so there's a framework within the nature of who we are, possibly, that could inform the idea of how you build a framework of. Before you jump on that, Alex, let me help you. Your name's Chris, right? Yeah. And you're the chair of CTU. Yeah. And CTU is Camden Town Unlimited, and that's a business association. So a kind of provocative question, and then a request for you to help us. Is it not the case that that as a business association, you are inherently some of the ones responsible for commodifying cool and taking over the kind of risk-taking in favour of something more stable? That's the provocative question. The more kind of maybe constructive and opening one is,
what do you think CTU can do to answer Alex's point? How from your position, from the board of CTU, how do you create this framework in which risk-taking and cool creation, if you like, or cool reinvigoration happens? So firstly, are you a plant? Is it just a business machine that you're in favour of? And if you're not that, what are you doing for cool?
I think anybody that is associated or understands what CTU has achieved and has done over the years will appreciate that it's not just a business machine.
Right.
And actually, CTU is set up by the occupiers, not by the property owners.
Right.
And there's a big difference in that, because actually, if businesses are successful, what they do is promote values for property owners. That's not what we're about. We're
Right.
about the occupiers of the space.
Uh-huh.
So CTU's been in existence now for the best part of 10 years.
Uh-huh.
And we've achieved an awful lot. Camden was falling apart at the seams when we came into existence because nobody else was doing anything. And some of the initiatives that we pulled through in that time have been very significant. And answering your second question in the first question about cultural risk-taking. I mean, we are the guys who have found these empty shops and forced landlords to let us have those spaces for free or low rent, so we can open up pop-up shops, so we can open up collectives, so we can bring businesses into Camden for no money or for little money to actually re-enliven Camden. I believe in cultural risk-taking, and I believe that if Camden doesn't do that and doesn't regenerate itself, it will die and it will go elsewhere. But I think also very, very important to that is the music aspect of Camden, because music continually regenerates itself. If Camden was playing the same 80s music every single night for the next 2 decades, it would die. Music regenerates itself, and that's a very good example of how Camden can regenerate itself. And it's just a question of having the spaces that people can move into and take those risks.
Let me ask you a couple of quick follow-ups, because otherwise Alex will answer these and then he'll get in trouble. Alex made a kind of provocative point, a very conceptually simple point about how development can happen in a way that's advantageous to property prices for his workers and other creatives and so forth. Question is, where's the money going to come from? Because it sounds easy to buy a bunch of property, given that you can get it at the right price. Still, someone needs to do it. Do you have a sense of how that might work? And the second question is, Alex has pointed out, and you've pointed out, Ben, from a different perspective, the council needs a bit of a polite prod or kick up the arse, depending on what time of the evening we're in, or how far down. What does CTU? What role do you have prodding the council or kicking them?
Well, foot's firmly up their arse most of the time.
But so, firstly, money for development or strategies for property solutions, and secondly, how does the council get their marching orders?
I think solutions for property development are not as complex as you believe they are.
Right.
It's a question of finding the space. There's a lot of very poor accommodation around, very low density around, and you can actually create good quality accommodation at greater densities whilst building in mixed and varied communities into that. So you have affordable housing as well as private housing, you have workspaces in there as well, you have shops in there as well, and you build communities rather than separating communities, which has happened for the last 50 years in London. People have been pushing communities away from one another rather than bringing them together. So I think that big developments are incredibly useful in doing that. And you take examples like Maiden Lane and Agar Grove estates, which are being completely regenerated by mixing 10 years, creating greater density, and they create value. Value is generated out of that, so it becomes self-perpetuating.
And the council, what's your take on how to get them in the right
council,
direction?
We came into existence because we had a real issue with two people, council and the police.
Right.
And the police were completely ineffective and were running Camden Town like it was a police state.
Right.
They come in mobs and kind of destroy what was going on, and then you wouldn't see them for 6 months. It was
Well, the borough commander famously said to me and Chris when we were haranguing them that he saw the solution of crime in Camden is to close the markets.
And after that, the music venues.
Yes. Which I told him to fuck off, I seem to remember, Chris, which was perhaps one of
So
the
you are already a resistance to the kind of kind of deadening hand of the council. But what's next?
What's happened?
Yeah.
CTU, it's very important to know, is apolitical.
Right.
And we work with all parties
Sure.
in order to achieve the right objectives.
Right.
So it's not based on political dogma at all.
Yeah.
And we have worked very hard to become what we believe to be the council's principal stakeholder. And the council now realises that in Camden Town they can't exist without us, because we started off by filling in the cracks and actually we took over the street. So in more and more ways they need to come to us.
So you guys are...
It's a very one-way street.
Right.
They need you when they need you,
right.
but they blank you, when you need them.
But so you're becoming the benign dictator. That is that?
I think to some extent. I mean, I think with all politics, that's up to all of us. If the more of us that get involved in local politics, the more democratic it is. But the great thing about local politics, I'm writing a column about this for the Telegraph, is I think local politics is the new sexy. You go into, the Prime Minister, you go into national politics, you can't change shit. Try and change the NHS, we've gone through two health ministers in this government and they achieve fuck all. And the great thing about local politics is, Chris and I set out to, for example, get rid of one lane on the high street. Something incredibly difficult. We just said, forget it. You've got to get TfL, you've got to get the council, you've got to get about 5,000 people. And we just went to one of our members who's a builder, what do they call the chartered surveyors, and we just got them to present TfL with a pack of trafficking and everything else. It took us, 40 grand a year, and we got the government to pay for it. And that's why, the extra lane was taken out of the strip between the street. And that took us from conception to it being built 3 years. And that's why local politics is really sexy. You can change stuff
and
really
leverage
easily.
£10 million out of TfL and the GLA
And to answer your question, I think, in some ways, Chris and I are the answer. But the way we, how helpful of me, the way we engage and the framework we change it in is we have to support bodies like CTU, Business Improvement Districts. They're making a real difference. I mean, what I'm saying to you today, I fight for. I've got a board meeting tomorrow and I have about 4 councillors there and the borough commander. And everything I'm saying to you now, I will be saying slightly more politely and diplomatically, but we'll be saying tomorrow to those people, and we do every month. And we slowly but surely win. But we need a lot more support for it. I think the council, there's this wonderful or horrific sort of silent majority of people who love Camden and music venues and the vibrancy and loudness. And yes, does that mean that people occasionally pee on the street and puke on the side? Yes, they do. It's London. It comes with the territory. We don't want to get rid of football because 40 people get arrested at a football stadium. That's ludicrous. Sadly, there is a small social cost. And in fact, venues and pubs pay for that through the taxation. And we have to clear that mess up. But to then try and think that that's bad because of maybe 300 residents, when we're talking about maybe 3 to 10 million visitors a year coming to Camden, is patently absurd.
Can I just clarify, essentially you're talking about a form of mediation that possibly has an aesthetic quality to it in terms of what is tasty, even though that might be, you can question that in a different context. But I think what I'm interested in is how you draw out the framework of the mediator, because I think it's a very different position, because you're understanding each of the bodies that need to come together to make joint decisions. So I just wondered if you could clarify what that role of mediation is, maybe more as a framework rather than less than what you do. How would you create that framework as if you could, someone could...
But in a perfect world, how would I do it?
Yeah.
Well, in a perfect world, I think the key change that needs to happen is I think the really big one is business tax needs to go back to the local government, because the local government will start listening to business. And on the whole, in a place like Camden, where we don't have big, horrifying, scary corporates, but most of us are normal businessmen like me. I think I'm not very normal, but I'm not some big person. And I think businesses have a much better idea and a more efficient idea how we can quite rapidly make things better. It's in our interest. I think the concept of power devolved to local works. Yes, I think the more power goes up the tree, the less representative and the worse it is.
Yeah, but in a way there's something, at lunchtime talk, there was an interesting idea about economics, that you have to influence the economics to make these decisions. So in a way, by devolving the power to smaller decision-making bodies, in a sense. Maybe, I don't know, could you just clarify that?
You're probably getting to an intellectual and esoteric point that's beyond my limited intellectual capability. That's a quick way of saying I'm not sure I can answer you. All I know is that the more communication there is, the more I'm in a room with the head of planning and the right counsellor, and I can knock their heads together. I can solve stuff. Business tends to be about that. We're about solutions. We're not about pedantic things. I mean, I'm happy tomorrow to say everything I've done is wrong. If someone can come and show me that I'll make more money the other way, that's the joy of capitalism. It tends to come with a great result. The great thing, and this is where I like, and I know I'm not going to be popular saying it's capitalism, is actually going to the lowest common denominator with shitty tourist tatty stores is bad for business, for everyone. Mm-hmm. You know, business likes independent traders. You know, it's good for everyone, and actually that's why. You can say you take someone like Chris, who's actually quite a big businessman. He wants the same vision as us, and that's why I quite like capitalism, because sometimes it works. And I think in that sense, business, when it's put in the room with the decision makers from government, tends to get stuff done because we just want to solve it. We just want to make it better. It's in all our interests. I'm perhaps a bit different in the sense that I kind of live here and have this sort of slightly strange passion about Camden, which is probably really stupid of me, but I do. I love this place. And it's you know, I could work down in Brighton. I've got venues all over the place, but I choose to work here because I love it. It's home and I enjoy it here.
I think there can be even more dialogue between the council and between people who make Camden what it is. This is what I've learned in my sort of 3 months being involved in local politics. I've chatted with Simon Pitt-Keithley, who works with CTU, and I love the stuff you guys are doing in terms of bringing, like, just using unused space and trying to get people in here. But it seems that sort of the scuttier elements that make Camden what it is that Alex was talking about, the punks and the goths and the hippies and the travelling musicians who come here, it feels like they're not necessarily getting a voice. So from my point of view, the council's busking licence policy, no buskers really were consulted about this. And I wonder if on things like the noise and the culture and everything that's going to make Camden what it is, sure, we've got to talk to Chris, we've got to talk to Alex, but why aren't the council also talking to people who use the venues, both the performers and the consumers that come in? Because as well as, I think we have to accept, I think there's two tiers of people who come to Camden. You've got the millions of tourists from all around the world, but you've also got Londoners from 18 to 30 who are here every single week.
And we need more of them. We haven't got enough of them. We haven't got anywhere near enough of them. And you know, more than anything else, if we get down to what I think the core need of Camden right now is we need to attract more Londoners back to Camden. And you know, it's chicken and egg. We need to put more independents in to get them. They need to come back to get the independents back in. But we need to get to this chicken egg scenario of going away. We've been chasing the lowest common denominator, and we need to start to raise the bar a little bit. And it needs to be an aggressive policy by the council, by the owners of the markets, and by us, the workers of Camden, and people who live and work and play here, by supporting those people. And if we all do it together, we can change it really quickly. I think CT will get there. But at the moment, it's taking too long, and it's frustrating because, you know, as you said, every week I see another good trader leaving the market. And it's really depressing. You see someone who's worked there for 20 years just packing up shop because the support network's gone. You know, there's not enough antique and furniture traders. I'll take some flack here because obviously Proud moved into a furniture market, but I was ensured that everyone was offered other areas of the market. But I could take flack for that, you know, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing as well, it's sort of back to what you were saying before about the social cost, is that Camden is one of those places that is naturally going to be a little bit dirty and a little bit messy. And from my brief engagement with the council, the impression that I've got is that councils tend not to like that. They're like things they can control, things that are nice and clean and obedient. And I don't think any of us would want a clean and obedient Camden.
So, I mean, you may not want to kind of jump in, but people who live and work in Camden, is there anyone who wants to? Hold on, let me just finish my question, because you can come in anyway. Do you have a view on the role of the council or CTU? Do you see the council and CTU leading the charge one way or the other? Does anyone want to kind of add to that? Because these guys clearly have a view. I just wonder if the people who were kind of embedded in whatever is going on have the same stance. Carry on.
My question was not linked to the collective, but we're part of the collective.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing opportunity for startups, all these kind of things. Just
Right.
Yeah, and it only can happen in Camden. This kind of thing. Just it's why we love Camden. And my question is
Just explain what you mean, because
Yeah.
people maybe who are watching the video don't know what you're talking about.
it was just my question was more linked to Parkway because it's a street.
But so you talked about the collective, right?
You know, it was just just to use. What's that? Yes, just the collective is basically it's a good place for startups because
Right.
it's a free space.
And that's down on Camden High
Yeah.
Street, right?
So
Free office.
CTU and the council together run it, and we encourage independent. It's not just about retail; it's about businesses.
Right.
And this lovely couple here are setting up the Camden Watch Company,
Great.
for example. And we set up a accelerator fund, and I think you got a grant for how much?
Yeah,
£10,000. I then sat and bored the hell out of them for 2 hours on how to run their business. I hope they ignored everything I said, which is probably why they're still here. And it's a really important part of what we do. This is going back to Tulsa. We've got to seed the next generation of businesses and young people, because people like this with really cool ideas are exactly what Camden needs.
You had a question.
Yeah, it does.
What's your name?
Jerome. And
Jerome.
My question was actually about Parkway because Parkway Street. I just walked the other day, and just with more estate agents than proper shops. There is, I think, 13 estate agents.
Yeah.
And with nothing else.
Right.
What can we do about this kind of?
We reduce the price of property.
Yeah.
Then the estate agents will start to disappear. We just need to get out of the sense that property prices are going to carry on spiralling like this. The sooner we do that, the better for London, the better for people who work, play, and a few less estate agents wouldn't be a bad side effect.
But let me ask you this, because if you take property, for example, because you mentioned the oligarchs who are coming in with the buy-to-let kind of framework, but there's also, you said you slipped it in, middle-class people who have that view. If we take Shoreditchification, there must be people who are buying the hipster kind of veneer, right? And so whether it's middle-class folks who are buying to let, just exploiting the property bubble, whether it's people kind of buying cool in its shallow plastic version, surely they're also to blame. You can't just take
but that's natural. You know, come on, who isn't? It's put their hands on someone in this room. If you had the chance tomorrow to you had £100,000 and you could turn it to 200,000 a year later, someone put their hands up. We won't do that. We'll all do that. It's human nature. What we have to do is put enough supply on the market that the price either steadies or actually even drops a little bit. It needs correcting.
Yeah.
We need to tax the top band on I want to say poll tax on council tax needs to be vastly higher. And you've got some oligarch worth £1 billion with a £50 million house paying exactly the same as someone who's got £1 million or a £750,000 house. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. People with third homes, whole chunks of Chelsea, there's nobody there. Mm-hmm. You know, they're third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh homes. Let's multiply business tax, council tax by 100 times if it's your third home.
Okay, so turning it down the other way, is it not time? I mean, so if we go back to when the Clash was starting out as a band, right? Surely there was a culture of much more kind of down and dirty street action, right? And so maybe you becoming a politician isn't the right way to go about it. You should just go and busk or crap in the street or whatever your plan was.
I'm not crapping in the street, but I have got my own.
But my point is that why go through the institution if the legacy comes from actual kind of direct action and movement and activism? Why is it that everyone's so polite? Why are there not more confrontational ways of dealing with this, if it is something quite that embedded?
I don't think it's the way you achieve. You can occasionally, there's certain eras in history, the punk movement being one of them, where factors have come together to allow a anti-establishment movement to achieve real change. It's rare. You know, if we look at life and go, I do stuff with the most chance of success, I could, take all my clothes off and join them over crap on the street, but actually engaging with the council is probably more likely to have an actual substantial effect on my life, as well as not getting me arrested and put in jail. I don't think confrontation has its place. So, for example, if HS2 had gone ahead, and I would have been there chaining myself to the bridge. There are times and places for confrontation, and we had CTU a kind of secret emergency plan of what would have gone on, as did the residents, and it would have got really messy. And I was really proud to see people. People were really willing to stand up and defend Camden quite physically. But I'm not sure that's the answer here now. I am slightly worried we're going to talk till everyone leaves the room.
Well, I'm waiting for the signal from Ben. So let's soften slightly and ask the question, because you talked about a silent majority of people that are happy to accept all the the bounty of Camden being what it is. How do you get the silent majority to be less silent? So confrontation is not the way.
I think the sad thing is what happened. It's really sad. If say for example I'd lost my license in that review, you can bet your bottom dollar someone would have started an internet petition the next day and 1 million people would have signed it, and then they would have mourned it. We're as human beings, we're a bit crap at waiting till the fucking horse is bolted and the door shut, and then we all suddenly jump. We need to get more involved, but we don't. And it was amazing.
That's a nationwide.
Yeah, no, totally, yeah. But it was wonderful. I was amazed to see this room full today.
Yeah.
That gives me enormous heart to see the fact that 20 people want to be bored shitless by me for an hour talking about this. Is fabulous. And what makes me think is maybe bodies like CTU are not going out there and telling people more that we need you on side. We need to hear from you, because if the council, what's ironic is why the bloody hell there's no councillors here. There's 25 people, 30 people, which is more than a council will get in one of his surgeries all year long. There's 30, 40 people in this room. It's being videoed to maybe 20, 50,000 people, and I've not got 3 councillors or a planning officer and county councillor in here, which is shocking.
Let's leave this as a kind of slow roundup. You guys, including you, Chris, and you, Ben, share what you think Camden Create as an event represents, right? Because what I perceive is that what you've got going on is the collective, as some kind of incubator. Maybe it's not an incubator, but it's some kind of accelerator or vehicle for bringing initiatives forward. What does the festival represent? So let's start with you, Chris. What is the festival? Why are you doing it? Having been in existence for 10 years, what's the deal now?
I think the festival is really celebrating the uniqueness of Camden anyway, and getting it out to a much wider audience, and showcasing a number of the things we've already got, but as a springboard to how much further we want to go. So this is a start. You have to build to a critical mass. You have to have more than just ideas. We now actually have examples, and we have good examples of best practice, and how to start regenerating Camden. So getting this out to a wider audience and people who can participate with their own ideas, and grow that a stage further, I think is what this festival's about.
Ben, you speak. Tell us what the festival means to you.
Ben, speak.
I just organise it.
No, but so what is it? What are you doing? What do you think you're doing with it? Right.
It's about creating a space for the conversation to happen.
Okay.
Everybody knows the high street, everybody sees the facades, everyone knows about the market, but nobody knows about the creative businesses that sit behind on the other streets and all of that's happening, and they don't talk to each other, and there's no space for them to talk.
So it's giving the silent majority an opportunity to be less silent, right?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, now this issue is in the public realm. It's being filmed. It's going to be put on the internet. It'll probably be watched by 100, maybe 100,000 people. Who knows? Right. The conversation's out.
What I want to do is end with you guys, but since you're all patiently sitting here, what I'd like you to do is just add everyone to go around super fast and say, just in 1 or 2 words, what you want Camden to Create to be or have next year. Just say the thing you'd like Camden to Create to be next year.
The festival, you mean?
Yeah, this event. Yeah. Like next year, what do you want it to have? More sex, more Motown, I don't know, whatever.
I don't know, more creativity.
Okay, that's enough. Yep, just quick.
Maybe some more like post-work events, because there's not so many, I think.
More post-work events?
Yeah, like after 5.
Yeah.
More interactive sessions.
Yeah. You've had your say, Chris.
I haven't had seen any music.
Yeah.
Music.
More music.
More cross-disciplinary, but it's pretty good. But
yeah.
And more opportunities for one-on-ones.
Yeah.
More progress.
No, you can't escape now. You have to. No, she's next. Okay, she needs a wee. Fine.
To be able to afford to live here.
Yeah. Did you say something?
Maybe events where people can participate as volunteers as well.
Interesting. Cameraman, you're not going to get away with it.
Yeah, more events basically.
More things to
people
film.
turning up.
Okay, very good. More jobs for the boys.
Yeah, I agree. Just make it bigger. Just
Make it bigger and better. More is more.
It's all the same. Good.
Yeah.
More communication, I
More
think.
communication. You have to say your name because you are part of the show this evening.
Tom.
Tom. And can we have a round of applause for Tom's beard, which has been much maligned?
Thank you.
It is a Camden beard, not a hipster beard.
All of us on the front row were students at Central St Martin's, and
Right.
we think maybe there could be like some kind of something link there because
Student tie-in.
Well, actually, no, we try.
Tomorrow.
We
Yeah.
try to, and actually, you need to harangue the powers that be
Oh, yeah,
because
we
they
will,
didn't want to
right.
get involved,
Yeah.
did they, Chris?
Tomorrow
No.
at 3:30.
The
Very
walk
some-
up the canal is such a nice walk. I walked that today from after uni. It's such a walk people could
We,
do.
we think that link
Yeah,
to
the
King's
links.
Cross is a massively strategic future for
Yeah.
Camden, the canal. We're
Needs to
trying
happen.
very
Art
hard.
galleries, art showings.
No, we're trying to get
private
the
museum.
investment in the canal to improve it because it's just so important, and the link to you guys, Google, all that's going on in that area.
Yeah, just young upcoming artists really, and there's performance spaces here are amazing. So many music venues where performance or art could happen for especially like,
Brilliant.
students at uni.
Well, the interesting you should say that the original idea when it came up, the thing I wanted Central St Martin's to take over Proud for a week and to let you do whatever you wanted, but the people running said no. So go and
Well, there'll be a way. Camera number 2. What's your big idea? Say it anyway. You're here now.
I'd like more of what you've been talking about to come to where I live. So,
Where is that?
No, that's not probably a priority for you guys.
Where is that?
North of London in Hertfordshire.
Okay.
I'd like to hear more from like the market traders. I don't think that they've been represented, and it's a massive part of Camden, and also more burlesque girls from around.
So we're done. Well, no, so now,
Wait, she's back. She's back.
the floor is yours. What would you want to see more of next year? Quickly.
Yeah, lots more erotica burlesque, shows.
More burlesque. Brilliant.
Artists.
Okay. So we're going to round off by Ben and then Alex. You share what you would like to have, not just what you want this to be next year, but what would you like to have seen done or achieved by next year? Shoot. You're going to be elected, obviously.
Say again?
You'll be elected, obviously.
Yes, absolutely. I'll be building up the green power base.
Right.
I would like to see, a few people said it, more dialogue. It seems that even when you guys are chatting to the council as a powerful conglomerate of businesses, the council is still going, well, we'll listen when we feel like it and the rest of the time we'll bugger off. That's an atrocious way of doing business. And that's a microcosm of what's happening in the country. Like this is, at this time in 2014, is the most time in my adult life that most members of the electorate feel really pissed off and disappointed with those in power, whether it be council, whether it be government, even internationally. I think Alex is right. If you want to try and get anything sorted on a national, international level, good luck. But on a local level, we can really make a difference. So I'd like to see the council talking to you guys more, talking to the market traders more, talking to the publicans more, talking to me more as someone who lives in Camden, because there's all sorts of things that I didn't know about, and I feel I should as a citizen of Camden. So that's the big thing I'd like.
So let me just say, because when I chaired an event and contributed to an event this afternoon on basically planning architecture, placemaking for Camden. But when Ben invited me to do it, the first thing I insisted is there has to be somebody from the council there, otherwise I won't do it. So we managed to get the assistant director of planning, and that turned out to be quite useful because he was smooth enough to avoid the difficult questions, but it was a useful exchange. And my comment would be that you need more. I mean, you've raised it. You've got to have more decision makers, and then they have to be more exposed. They are elected, or if they're civil servants, they are paid by your taxes. Get them in the room when you have these kinds of
but they're
conversations.
civil servants, therefore they leave at 5 p.m. if they
Well,
don't work at all.
but if during the day. So, what do you want to see done by this time next year?
I think-
and what do you want this to be next year?
I think by this time next year, I want to see them have spent 20 million in stables and regenerated and
Right.
put independent traders
Right.
back. Streetscape, which is our big taking traffic off the road, is being pushed down to Britannia Junction, and we're going to put a big installation and take Compton. Want to see that finished. Want to see a constructive council elected who listen to us more often. And I want to see collective grow its size. I mean, we've got, I don't know how many businesses, but 100 businesses we're now looking after her. You know, why not aim for 1,000? You know, the council's the biggest landlord in the whole of Camden, and about at any given stage, 20-30% of its property is vacant. There is absolutely no reason the collective couldn't be the engine that redevelops Camden, and that's what we want to aim for.
And so you want just more and better next year to reflect
the festival,
all that?
I think we need it. I was a little disappointed with the local press. I think they could have got behind it a lot more than they did. And I think, as I think a few of you just said, that not enough people knew about it. I think my gut feeling is next year we need to have one or two bigger headline events that bring the press interest in, and then that all dissipates down. I think it lacks one or two big headline events, and maybe we have to find some budget to pay for a big band or a big comedian or something that's going to bring real interest, and then the rest of it grows. I also think what we didn't push enough was the idea that every business in Camden agrees in a meeting with all the big bosses to give all the staff half a day off. That we put 30,000 people. We tried to do it a bit this year, and I don't think it took off. And I think that would really change the amount of people at these events. And the great thing is, I think, although we've gone on too long today, and I think I'm probably pretty dull, I think actually on the whole, when people come to events like this, they're normally quite inspired to go, shit, I could really do that. You know, that guy Alex Proud, he's not that bright, and he's achieved quite a lot in 10 years. You know, I think I could do the same. And it would just be great to see young people such as yourselves who bothered to come over from St Martin's getting involved, and it would make such a difference to our democratic voice to have more young people involved in local politics. It is the new sexy. I know it sounds ridiculous. Local politics is where it's all at.
So thank you to Ben and thank you to Alex for being passionate advocates for Camden continuing to be a place of great excitement. Thank you to Ben for organising. Thank you to CTU for being the engine behind the whole machine, and thank you to all you guys for showing up. I don't think you were bored. I think that you guys held the floor very well. So a round of applause to all of you.